Hello, this is BJ from Hearns, and I'm going to be talking about the model that I built for Model Expo in 2018, which was the food van. So I'm going to talk about it in a bit of detail about how I went about building the model, my concepts, and some techniques. So we'll have a closer look at this, and I think we'll start with the basic composition. With dioramas, I always like to get them to have some sort of balance and various elements to keep the composition interesting. Now, I started off with the Ebro Citroen H van, which is a van which was it was produced from after the Second World War, 1947 to 1981. So it has this very specific boxy look to it. And with this nostalgic shape, and because it was a food van of a French bakery, I thought it needed a figure, and I've got the Master Box figure here, which I've modified to carry a tray of croissants. Now, with that figure came a dog, so I've got the dog on this corner, and I've made a base with some cobblestones, which to me are very European. So all in all, those basic concepts there is where I start to create my composition. Now, as I was conceptualizing, I thought with a standard model, the interiors of these are normally very dark. So this was my first attempt at lighting an interior with a very small LED. Now, that came in very early with the construction. So with the roof section, it actually pops off, and I'll give you a quick look at how the LED is fitted. So I just gently pull this up. So bring it up like this. So here you'll be able to just see the LED I have here. So that's a very small surface mount LED. And you'll see the wires, which I've left exposed because they add to the model, I think, which is just a 0.2mm copper wire. And then at the ends, I've made little spring coils for the contacts on the top of the model here. Now, from the model here, there's wires which travel through the side into the tyre, and they exit into the base, which is then connected up to some batteries. So I'll get into that in more detail a bit later. So I'll leave this off for the moment because you get to see more of the aspects of the model. So the Ebro model of the van went together very well. The whole idea is, firstly, I study the manual, and I don't follow the manual step by step. I see which areas I can build first, so that when I'm painting, you don't have issues with glue lines as such. So the front end of the van, the chassis, and then 3 sides were built in 3 separate components. And then they were all sprayed with Tamiya spray cans, or spray lacquers. So this particular colour is French blue. And then all the rest of the details been added on with acrylic paint.
So, what was it that made you decide to want to build this van?
This van? Well, when I first saw the kit, I thought it was really interesting because I like complex looking models, I guess. It had a full interior.
Yeah.
Something a bit different, civil, and had all the food, which I quite like.
Yep.
Saw the French pastries and bread, and I started thinking about the idea from there.
So, with this model here, you went on to then further produce more items of food
I did.
To fill out the van a bit more. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So where you see it now, it's got plenty of stock of food because the initial kit only comes with a couple of samples of each item. So I've taken the sprue with the food that was supplied, and I've made a very simple mold from milliput. So I've mixed up milliput as you would normally. It's a 2-part mixture. It's quite large, so about so much. I've pressed it onto the sprue, and it takes a number of hours to set. So before it was fully set, I pulled it off the original, because if you leave it too long, it'll be all locked in. And then I let it fully set afterwards without the original in there. And once that was ready to go, I used a bit of Vaseline, just rubbed it on the inside of the mold, got some fresh milliput, pressed it in, same again, before it fully set, picked them out, and then I just created all the extras.
Yeah, cool. Well, the result is absolutely fantastic. So,
thanks.
One question that's always a tricky one for modelers, but how many hours would you say that it took you to...
How many hours?
Yeah, so from start to finish, how long do you reckon it roughly took you to build this model?
I don't really know, because I always start at a slower pace. And then as it gets closer to deadline, I speed it up a bit. So this, I had no intention of building it for Model Expo, but it got to the point where I was getting close by a couple of months, and I put in a bit of extra effort and finished it and entered it. So I would have started this in October 2017. And then as it got into March, so that would have been on and off, maybe a weekend here, a weekend there. Got into March of 2018, and then I started working on it almost every evening, all the way up to the last day before the event. So I guess it would have been March, April, May. So it's 3 months of almost daily work. So that's a lot of hours, I don't know.
Yeah, so all up, impossible to say, but
yes,
more than enough love and sweat went into what we see here, which is just a fantastic final model. So yeah, so you've got a bit of a plan for this model, for its future, what you're planning on pushing it forward for. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So with this particular model, I felt that with the recent fires that Australia's been suffering, which actually started very early last year. Some places in Queensland started getting fires, I think, mid-year. And it all culminated at New Year's Eve. And then the fires only recently gone out in some parts of New South Wales and Victoria. So I'm going to be putting this model up for auction with the proceeds being donated to fire relief.
Any other details regarding the model you'd like to share with us?
Sure, I'd like to talk about a lot of things actually. So it might come in sort of willy-nilly, but just want to give an idea of how I thought about producing this model and how I went about it. So if I went chronologically, it would have been the planning of how everything was to go together. So I had to work out where the batteries for the light were going to be and how I was going to feed that into the base. And then after that was balancing the composition, so every angle looked interesting. So I guess if I just pick this up here, like so. Now, the van's actually screwed into the base, and thought was put into it so that it could be transported, because there's nothing worse than having a bottle fall off when you're taking it to a competition. So as you see from here, so I had to work out the size of the base I wanted to go with. So you'll notice that I've angled the van so that it doesn't look like a boring, flat, perpendicular type of arrangement. And then you have the cobblestones, which are all hand cut and laid in the pattern, and then filled with a putty.
So what material did you use to create the cobblestones? Because they look great.
So the cobblestones were cut from a 3mm foam sheet.
Oh yes, yep.
Yep. So they're just cut into strips.
Yep.
And then each individual tile was cut.
Yep.
And then I started with one basic form, and then I followed it until I reached the other end.
Excellent. Oh, well, the outcome looks fantastic. And so just basic scratch building really for that, and shows what can be done with, relatively basic techniques.
Yes, that's right. And then it's filled with some water-based putty. That's had a little bit of water added so it's easy to brush into all the grooves. And then later painted, and then with a little bit of pigment to add a bit of
give it a bit of texture.
Dirt.
And
yes.
yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's finished off with a few washes just to get the shadow effect.
Yep.
Yep.
No, it's come up fantastic.
Yeah, and so with the angle, the angle is not totally symmetrical. So there's different aspects from each corner. And then from those corners, so you notice that when you look at it from the top, there's always a border that matches all the way around. And then the dog is placed in a point where you don't really notice it until you look around the front. And then there's an open door which allows you to see inside, which is on this side. On this side is closed, so you get more of an overall view of what the truck would normally look like. And then the secondary figure here, secondary to the van that is, so that's bringing your attention into the van. It adds a human element. And then resting on the A-board. So the A-board, I guess the relationship is with the van, and then with her leaning against it is getting ownership of that. So it ties a story together. Yeah. So there's no doubt that this is the proprietor of the van, holding goods that are from the van, and then this is, the friendly dog that's just hanging around protecting the van.
Excellent. Well, we can see on the model you've managed to achieve a really, really realistic finish on the van, so it definitely has that old school kind of metal look to it.
Yes.
So yeah, what techniques and what items did you use to achieve that final result?
So with these particular vans, I guess thinking about the age of the van, because they're going back to possibly post-World War II. Now the finishes on cars at that stage weren't super mirror finish as you would expect these days. So I started off with a fine primer, and I guess normally when you want a mirror finish on a car, you put on the primer and then you'll sand the primer until it's really smooth. This is raw primer that hasn't been sanded, and then the French blue from the can's been applied straight away. So this is a Tamiya French blue, and then the top section is a very nice retro racing white. So it's got this slight beige bone effect to it.
So both of the blue and the off-white were both achieved from just a Tamiya spray pack.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
So again, relatively simple techniques.
Yes. So I didn't use an airbrush with this particular model at all.
Yep.
And then after they were applied, the gloss clear was put on. So there should be a gloss, but it shouldn't be absolutely mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, you want that appearance that it's well kept and it's glossy, but it's still old.
Yes,
and it's
that's right.
Which really has achieved, which is great.
Now with the corrugations, so I've added some black wash just to give it some road grime. So that gives it a bit of context as well. So it's something that's well kept. It's been kept over the years, but it's still being used.
Yeah.
I guess another trick here is with the screwing down of the tyres. So the tyres are rubber. So by screwing them into the base, I've been able to tension it to a point where it looks like there's some preload. So it looks like there's weight on the tyres. It's a little bit squished on the bottom. Hard to notice, but when you have a closer look, it's there. Let's see. There's quite a few glass components. And glass can be tricky because when you use regular cement, it's quite easy to have some overrun and then it'll mark the glass. So this has all been fitted with, I think it's glue and glaze, so it works very well.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So it's quite good because when it sets, it feels vinyl-y, it's got a bit of give to it, and it also sets up so you can't see any edge. So that's been used on all the clear parts.
Yep.
Also the display for all the food and all the lights and such.
Yep.
Very easy to use.
So that was the Deluxe Materials glue and glaze.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So it worked very well. I guess the other trick is doing indicators and brake lights. So you might be able to see indicators there. They've got this transparency to them and depth. And they're just at the back. So that's just with Tamiya clear acrylic. Now the trick to applying that and getting it smooth is to apply it in quite a thick coat. So that's about 2 thick coats applied on the outside of the lenses. And then at the back of those, I've painted them silver to give the reflective effect. So the figure is a Masterbox figure. So they're incredibly good quality for injection mold figures. Probably not as crisp as a resin figure, but much more affordable and very easy to modify. So initially her hand was more in the upright position like this, and she was holding a cigarette. So it's been modified by cutting the wrist at this point, and then dropping it down, and there's new fingers that have been sculpted just on the bottom with a bit of milliput. And then the tray and the croissants were supplied with the van and just glued into place. Now, with figures, I like to build as much as possible so that you avoid any of the gaps. So it's been fully assembled, sanded, sprayed with primer. I tend to use the Tamiya white fine primer, so it's not too rough. And then it gives enough of a key so that when I'm brush painting, the paint comes off nice and smooth. So all the paint I've used on the figure is acrylic. It's a mixture of Vallejo, Tamiya acrylic, and also Joe Sonia's craft acrylics. Now, some of the tricky parts would be the skin tones, and skin tones can take quite a variety of coats. So I'll start with a base coat, which is like a medium flesh tone, and then I'll overlay that with shadow tones, which I've mixed with some pinks, some purples, a little bit of blue, just to change tones, and then to get that the makeup effect. With figures, the eyes are most important, so I'll start on the eyes first after the skin tone, and then work on the eyes until I'm happy with it before I finish the rest of it, because basically if the eyes aren't right, then it would detract from the rest of the figure.
So was there any special techniques that you used to create the skin texture that we see on her?
So it's just a use of a lot of glazes. So glazes are getting paint and mixing them down with a thinner or water. So I tend to use water with these particular paints. It works very well. And then the thinner the paint is, the softer the effect is. So you can use it, you can put on the glaze, and if it doesn't quite look right and you need more, it's quite easy to put on more rather than take off a heavy glaze. And then it's just working slowly on the skin tones until it looks as natural as you think it can be. So I guess with the hair as well, so the hair was quite rounded, I guess, in detail. With the rounded detail in the hair, I've just added a bit more by scribing some lines to add some texture. And then the jeans, I wasn't too sure how to do the jeans with the worn look, but it's very easy to just look at some reference photos. And that's just done with a lighter tone of blue, just glazed over the top.
So in regards to figure painting as well, so with the little bulldog that we see
yes.
on the diorama as well.
Yes.
So you've done a really great job in showing the different fur textures and whatnot within that. So do you want to talk us through how that was achieved?
Yeah, sure. So I use a different technique with that. It's another figure painting technique that some people prefer, and starting with black. So you start with totally black, and then you work all the way up to the highlights of pure white. So with this, he was totally black to start with, and then being black, when you're adding on the glazes of the browns, you always get the background black coming through. So even now, you probably see, it's very subtle though, the base black is coming out through some of the shadows. So you slowly work onto the highlights. So the lightest tones are across the top and darker towards the bottom. And then you also make the differentiation, such as the chest and the belly fur is a different color. And the blending of the nose, because the nose is black, and then it goes to a pure brown. So that was done with glazes as well, just from references you find on the net. So
with the dog, there's a lot of very small, finer detail that you've managed to paint on there as well, such as the eyes and the nose.
Yes.
Any certain techniques you use to be able to paint such small things?
Well, it helps to be able to see closely. Yep. So I always use a magnifying type of headpiece. So I guess they look like goggles that just fit on your head, and it's got different types of magnification, because you need some very, very fine brushes to be able to paint that. So they'll be like the signature, like 5-0, 10-0 brushes.
Yeah.
So I guess the eyes for an animal are a little bit easier because it's quite dark all the way around.
Yeah.
Unlike with human eyes, which have the whites and such.
Yeah, there's a lot more to capture in a human eye than an animal eye with models.
But as long as you get to a stage where it looks realistic, that's fine.
Cool.
So massive. So on the bottom, I'll give you a quick look at how it's set up. It's really very simple. So you'll notice that there's a switch here for controlling the power to the LED. So this is a screw which holds on the front wheel, and that's where the wire is fed through the front wheel to the LED. So it just comes to this little board. The only thing that's on this board is a resistor, because every LED needs a resistor to control the amount of current that goes through it. And then that's just wired up to 4 AA batteries. And that's as simple as that. So it's all about getting the overall effect to be interesting. So for me, like a museum type piece.
Yep.
Like when I was a kid, you go to a museum and you just look at all those little dioramas I used to have.
That's it.
And you look at all the detail. So that's something I'm trying to bring into diorama like this.
Well, as you mentioned earlier too, you know, each figure in the van is placed in a way that it does tell a story.
Yes.
So yeah, as with any model, you're trying to capture that, and I think you've done a wonderful job of really just capturing what it is.
Thanks for that.
So yeah, no.
Yeah, I found the subject interesting, which helped. Because I didn't really know much about these vans. Then you start looking into it, and you learn more and more, such as how the engine was accessed, which is through the front.
Yep.
And little details like that, which I wouldn't have learnt otherwise.
Yep. I suppose that's one of the good things when you find a model that catches your eye. You just go for it, and then kind of as you go through the process, you learn more about that model.
Yes. So, yes, that's right.
So back in 2018,
yes,
you got first place in the non-military.
I did.
For this one.
I did. I was happily surprised. That was Model Expo. That was the first time going back to Expo after many, many years. And I popped it in there just to see how it would go. So it worked out well.
Yeah, so it was first place in the non-military dioramas class,
yes,
wasn't it? Yeah,
that's right.
So,
yes.
Yeah, bit of interesting competition there against you as well with various different projects people.
Oh, there were. So because it's non-military, there's a lot that goes on. And is available to enter. So it's science fiction and all sorts of bits and pieces. And look, the other work was very good as well. And when I saw the other work when I was placing my model in there, I thought, oh wow, some were just very impressive in terms of being epic. They were huge.
A model doesn't always have to be something extravagant and out there. Sometimes it can be something like so, a relatively simple scene.
Yes.
But just executed really well to show that story and just show what can be done from a plastic kit.
Yeah, sure. So as long as it brings a little bit of emotion to whoever views it, then it's done its job well. Might just see this is just coming off a bit. So here's another aspect of when I plan building models is with transport, anything that's fragile, you need to be able to, I guess, handle. So this particular door, because it's so thin, it's scale thin, so there's no way it'll stay in place with just glue. So I've used some fine music wire just here to act as pins. I've drilled some holes in the side of the pillar here, and these just fit inside. So when you're transporting, it's just easier to move it from place to place. So we're just getting the right holes. So just like so. Oh, maybe not. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay, and just pulse back on like that. So even with bumps and things, you don't have to worry about that. And then with the roof section, so we can just pop it back on top. Okay, and so with a little bit of pressure, so circuit's on again, and the LED is illuminated. Hope everyone's enjoyed my little talk about the model I've done. And if you have any questions about any of the details, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments below.